podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie and I am a relationship expert, international speaker and best-selling author. I've decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news or on social media, the perception is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world and talk about real stories, what real people do and go through, as opposed to creating expectation of something that doesn't exist. So here today we have Becky, who is going to talk to us about the trials and tribulations of online dating, but also that it can work. Hi, Becky.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. You?
Yeah, good, thanks. So can you tell me a bit more about yourself, but more to the listeners than me, really?
Okay, so my name's Becky and I'm going to be 40 this year. I am married, have been married for almost 8 years, and I have a 5-year-old son. And I was a probation officer for 16 years, but I recently left and have become a child sleep expert. So I help parents get their unruly children to sleep.
That sounds very interesting indeed. Maybe another conversation for another day. Right, so tell me about online dating. Tell me about how you got to the idea of trying it out, whether you were single for a long time, what were your feelings around it?
Okay, so I had been in a long-term relationship for about 5 years, which ended just before I turned 30. And at that point, most of my friends were married or were in long-term relationships, starting to have children. So when I became single at the ripe old age of 28, I decided that I didn't meet anybody new very often. I was a probation officer. Most of my colleagues were female. Most of my clients were completely off limits and undesirable. So, in fact, all of my clients, not most. And so my mum gave me the idea to try online dating, a bit of a kind of have a look before you buy. So that's kind of what led me to it.
Fair enough. You've actually just given me an idea for a different podcast for what we just said there, but never mind. Okay, so she told you that, and then what did you think? Do you think there's a bit of a social stigma around online dating, especially back in the day, shall we say, because it was 12 years ago?
Yeah, I was a bit worried because particularly in my job, that I was going to meet some kind of stalker or axe murderer. And it felt like a bit of a sad and lonely thing to do, really, that it was a bit of a conversation stopper for a lot of people.
It's odd, isn't it? Because I mean, I've known people who have met people in real life, and I remember one particular example. It was someone I worked with, and she met this chap in the real world. They were friends for about 6 years and then got together and were together for 4 years. So all in all, I'd known him for 10. And actually one day when she was making the bed and stuff went quite right between them, she found a knife on the side of the bed that he was preparing to use on her. So it is odd that we've got this perception that online you're going to meet someone who's like going to do despicable things to you. And yet, we don't have that perception with someone in the real world.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Danger.
I know, it can just happen, you know what I mean? Like, to anyone, as it were. Anyway, I don't want to scare people off on that one. So, do you think that, because for me, nowadays, online dating is really, if you were looking for a job, you would put your CV online, it goes without saying. And I kind of see online dating as the same thing. If you're looking for somebody, don't close yourself off to opportunities, in the real world, shall we say, but you need to have, inverted brackets, your CV online.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good analogy, because I think online dating is a lot like people's CVs. They maybe embellish the truth and leave out all their bad points, and maybe focus on the positives and elaborate their good points, maybe. And you find a lot of people online are not quite what they said they were on paper when you meet them.
And would you say, awkward question, that you probably did that yourself too?
No, I don't think I did, because I think I genuinely, there's a lot of people who were just looking for one thing, shall we say,
Yeah.
not for a relationship, but that wasn't necessarily really clear from their profile. But I thought there's no point in not being honest, because I'm going to attract the wrong sort of people. So
Yeah, that's interesting, because sometimes I have to do some reviews of online profiles, and I find that actually some of them are quite transparent, um, in the fact that actually we're not really looking for a relationship.
yes, yeah, I steer clear of those ones at the time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, but what I also think, tell me your thoughts, is a lot of the time I see online profiles and it's all about what people want in a person. So they describe like the kind of job they'd like someone to have and status and stuff, but there's never anything about what they've got to offer, or very, very rarely.
What about what the individual has to offer?
Yeah.
I think that's true. It's all about kind of what you kind of have in your head, don't you? What you think you're amazing and that anybody would be lucky to have you.
Yes.
So you therefore just look for kind of if they're going to be a match for you or not.
Okay, so tell me a bit more. So you've joined the online dating site, and then what happens?
So I started off, my mum kind of, I didn't have a lot of money at the time. My mum was like, well, I'll pay for you to join an online dating site. So I did that, and I found it really frustrating. I'm really impatient, and so you see somebody, you like the look of them, or they sound okay, and then you kind of, it's like a wink or a like or whatever, and then they kind of a couple of days later maybe like you back or message you, and then you start this email messaging which can go on for weeks and weeks, and you kind of think, oh, this person seems really nice. One of you gets brave and says, oh, let's meet up, and then you meet up, and then quite often, in fact, I was going to say 9 times out of 10 times out of 10, I genuinely just instantly was like, no, this is not going anywhere, and sometimes it was like the other way around. So we would meet, and then you'd think it would go well, and then you didn't hear from them again. So I felt like it was I felt like I was wasting my time, because while I was emailing that one person, I wasn't kind of emailing loads of people, and I kind of felt like I'd invested a couple of weeks of my time in this person for them to be completely unsuitable, and it was quite kind of up and down. It was very exciting for a couple of weeks, and then instantly deflating.
See, that's quite interesting what you just said, because I think that 12 years ago, it was kind of that, where you just emailed one person back and forth, or it was more that, where I think nowadays, it's actually most people will email more than one person. It's kind of taken for granted that, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, sort of thing.
And absolutely, and now I guess as well, you can do it like, people have emails and internet on their phones, which they then. So it was very much, when I got home from work, going and firing up the laptop and seeing.
Yeah.
So it was very different.
And you say sometimes you'd meet them and you were like, no, it's not for me. Was that an instant kind of chemistry reaction thing, or was it more like through them talking, or?
Yeah, I think sometimes, sometimes you'd kind of meet them and it was all either a bit awkward, or it was, you just kind of felt, they'd drop like something into conversation, you think, oh my God. So you just wouldn't kind of want to pursue it any further.
Okay, so out of all the dates that you had, did you have some that lasted maybe more than one date?
Yeah, there was a few.
Yeah.
But again, it was kind of that they just kind of fizzled out, really. There was no real, you'd have 1 or 2 dates, and then it just didn't seem to really go anywhere. Fair enough. It was quite frustrating.
Okay. Any disasters?
I did have one particular disaster. So there was a guy that I mentioned, no names, that I met, and so I was a probation officer at the time, and we met, and he was telling me, and this was, I think he was one that I did date a couple of times, so he took me to Nando's actually when it just opened in Fareham, and he first of all complained like really badly, which was really embarrassing, and then he was telling me a story about how he had gone into Wilkinson's and bought something, and then he went in the shop with the receipt, and then picked up another one off the shop floor and took it back and gave the receipt and got his money back. So we had the goods at home, but also got a refund from another one in the shop. Right. And I was a bit like, yeah, that's kind of stealing. And he was just like, no, it's not really, is it? And it was just like, I just couldn't have got out there quick enough because, and then he turned on to be a bit of a stalker in the end. And actually a few years later, ended up on probation for something, so I was quite glad I was well out of that one.
And it's funny, do you think that you relied on your gut instinct when you were going on these things? I mean, obviously if you're a probation officer, you probably listen to it a bit more than, shall we say, other type of jobs and people. Because I know that I went out with a chap some 7 years ago and ended up getting an injunction against him, and actually I went against my gut instinct so many times there. Great lesson, because never will I not listen to my gut instinct again. But do you think that there was an element of that, where sometimes people, what I see that it is, they go on a date and they kind of know that it's not right, but because they so want someone, they're like, no, it's all right, it's got to be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly as well, I think with the ones that seem too good to be true, they generally are. So it kind of then takes a bit of time to work that out, but I think you probably, if you think about it, need that from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. And then were there any times when you wanted to give up, or did you meet other people through other means during that time?
Yeah, not really. So basically I got really frustrated, and after about a year I got really frustrated with the whole process of this kind of it taking weeks and weeks, and then you met somebody. So I changed my approach. I was like, right, I'm going to do this differently. So if somebody sends me a message, or if I like the look of somebody, I'm going to email them and just be like, right, look, I found this really tedious. I think you really don't know till you meet somebody. We could email forever and never know till we meet. So what are you doing tomorrow night? And I became like speed internet data. So it'd be like, right, we meet tomorrow, or we don't. That's it. Like, so I would kind of got really fussy, and I lined up a whole week of dates. I had a different one every night. So
it's quite interesting, because one of the complaints from men is actually that women are the ones who want to email for days and days and months on end.
Yeah, I think I am just really impatient, and at that point, and because I think I was getting closer. So by this point, I was a couple of months off my 30th birthday. All of my friends were sprouting out children like there's no tomorrow, and I was going to weddings alone, and it was just, for me, my parents were quite old when they had me. Then they weren't, but in my head they were. And I was like, I was willing to have my kids before I was 30, and I didn't even have a boyfriend, and I was like, this is I was kind of a bit like, I'm a bit of a homebod, and I just wanted to settle down and stay at home, and sorry, my power just went, and just sort it, so I was just impatient, I think, and maybe a bit desperate, if I'm honest.
So how long were you single for, all in all, and how long were you doing online dating for?
So I was single for just over a year. Just about.
It's quite interesting what you said as well, of lining up a week of dates. I know a couple of people who actually lined up, like, literally in a cafe. Every hour there's a new one.
Oh wow!
That's just kind of like, really like attack plan. Let's just sort this out.
Yeah, well, I did. That's where I went to. So I tried other things. I tried speed dating with some friends, which was
that's interesting, isn't it?
Hilarious.
I know.
There was no potential dates from it, and I think there was one guy that I met on speed dating, and he then turned up. He had to get his mum to give him a lift to the pub because his car had broken down, and then he's like, "Oh, can you give me a lift home?" And I was a bit like, don't really want to. Like, no. I did try things, but so I found the aggressive kind of aggressive, maybe not the right word, but just kind of full on strategy. It just meant that you weren't then waiting around getting your hopes up. Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously you met someone special.
In this week of aggressive dating, so what used to happen was, I lived on my own, and on a Saturday my mum would come around for lunch. We'd maybe do a bit of shopping, go for lunch, and then in the afternoon we'd get the laptop out and we'd scour for men that she thought were suitable or unsuitable to be her future son-in-law. And I can remember there was one particular guy, and my mum like he lived in Bognor, and my mum was like, oh, Bognor's awful, don't go there. And in his profile picture he was with his motorbike, and my mum was like, I hate motorbikes. So we kind of
dismissed him,
passed him by. So
not
then
judgmental much.
No, I know, like he's got a motorbike and lives in Bognor, therefore it's a no. So I then was like lining up this week of dates. I was like, I'm just going to do it every night and then see, law of averages, one of them's got to be okay. But the men seemed to be getting a bit thin on the ground. I think I'd done the rounds quite a little bit, and there was the same people on there. So we revisited Mr. Bognor motorbike, and he became Tuesday of the week. And so I had dates Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So 6 dates lined up that week. And on Tuesday, Mr. Bognor motorbike is now my husband. So needless to say, Wednesday through to Saturday had to get cancelled. So
that was one of my next questions, whether you knew there was something special and different about him straight away. But obviously, if you cancelled the rest, you did.
Yes, I did. After our first date, I texted my mum and I said, I've just met the man I'm going to marry. And she said, don't be so ridiculous. And I was like, because she knows that I'm quite a romantic and I'm quite flitty and stuff. So she said, don't be ridiculous. And I thought, well, I need to not be going out with other men, because actually I quite liked this one, and I don't want him to find out that I've been kind of going on more dates with people.
So what about, I know he's not with us, but what about his side of the story? What did he feel at the time? Did he feel the same way? Was it?
Absolutely, yeah. Luckily, lucky for me.
Yeah.
I think he'd had some internet dating disasters too, although he hadn't been on it for quite as long as I had. So he did well. But yeah, he was definitely, so he came, that was on the Tuesday, he came round to my house for dinner on the Thursday, and he never left.
So just a question, because we were talking just now about being judgmental, and I think that's one of the main things that people, I have once used Tinder, and I personally don't like it because I find it too superficial, and I think that's one of the issues and why people sometimes don't connect at a deeper level, is because he's becoming too superficial. So it's really interesting that actually you dismissed him and judged on Bognor and motorbikes, and actually he turns out to be okay. So tell me a bit more about that. What made you think, okay, I'm being too judgmental, I'll give him a go, and then what was actually special about him that made you think, oh my God, actually he's all right?
I think once I met him, we just had the same kind of values. We both wanted the same things out of life. We were both very family orientated. I'd had ex-boyfriends that they didn't really understand the relationship I had with my mum, which was very close. And he at the time sadly was living at home with his parents following a failed relationship of his own. So he kind of understood we had the same family values. We've been brought up in a similar way, and we just had a lot of similarities. I still dislike the motorbike. He actually sold it to buy my engagement ring, so bless him. But so it was it's.
I think it's a valuable lesson that I think people need to take, which is, do not stop at just the photo, because as we all know, the person's going to look differently in real life anyway. But, it isn't just all about that. And I think that there's so many people that sometimes meet but would never have met in an online dating environment because their criteria or whatever would not have matched. And yet they're perfect for each other. Sometimes it just grows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I'd known, I might have judged if I'd known that he lived at home with his parents straight away, but then that wasn't important once I've met him. If you'd have told me that before, it was more that, we just wanted, we spoke on the phone once before, and he was kind of like, I think he asked me, like, why are you, I think he was checking that I wasn't a psycho because he'd had a psycho ex-girlfriend. Why are you online? And I said, I just want to find somebody nice that kind of I can come home and ask me how my day was, because I kind of really miss that. And so that was the first thing he said to me when we met was, hi dear, how was your day? And then it's still to this day, he still does it. So it's like our little thing that,
Yes.
so it's very, very cute.
That's nice. That's nice. Okay, so what advice would you give someone who's currently struggling with online dating?
Oh, just be yourself and persevere, and don't judge a book by its cover. I think I'm still a firm believer the aggressive methods was my absolute winning this. So don't kind of waste your time spending a long time. And I think things have moved forward with, like you say, Tinder, and it's a lot more instant. You can have instant chat or instant message or things like that. So I think things have probably moved forward in that way anyway. But yeah, just kind of don't be afraid of it and just be yourself.
Because one of the things I find, I think women are probably a bit more afraid than men for whatever reason, really, probably because they feel a bit more vulnerable. But I think, as you say, there's little to be scared off. You've got to go for it. And emailing someone for months on end is not going to achieve anything. Really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not in the long term.
No.
Okay. So what do you think of it all now, if you look back?
Yeah, it was. It was a good experience. I've got some very funny stories to tell, maybe that aren't appropriate for your podcast, but
Do you think in terms of the journey, was it worth that year, so that maybe when you saw him, you could really think that no, this is it, because you knew how hard it was to meet someone that was half decent and half the person you needed?
Yeah, I think if I'd met him, he'd been the first date I met, because I think actually probably the first person I met internet dating, like, he was nice enough, and probably it might have worked out, I don't know, but in my head I was like, oh, you're the first person I've met, I've not been single that long, and it was just, and he was a bit more keen than I was, and that I found that quite off-putting, because I think I was probably ready to have a bit of me time. So I think it was a good experience. Maybe a year was quite a long time to be feeling unwanted and unloved, but it still it had a happy ending. So
it's interesting, because I actually think that I know of a few people that are also going to be on this podcast, and others that aren't going to be on there, but who have been single for literally absolutely years, and who would think that 1 year is nothing.
Absolutely.
But I guess it depends on your age, it depends on the perceptions, and it depends on your priorities at the time.
For me, I think I'd been a serial long-term relationship. So from the age of 17, I had a 5-year relationship that ended, then I had another 5-year one, then another 5-year one. So it was the kind of the 5-year itch, maybe. It got to a point where, but then it was like, and then I was a teenager, and then suddenly I was a kind of an adult in the working world, and then suddenly I was nearly 30, and it was like, there's been these 3 men that have taken up 15 years of my time, and for what? Because actually I thought with each one of those that was it, we'd get married and we'd have kids, because after the length of time, so for me then it was more of a like, I haven't really got, if I meet someone and it takes another 5 years and I realise they're not the one, then I'm cracking on a bit, and I need to start thinking of a plan.
I can understand what you'd feel that way. At the same time, I think it's a journey, and sometimes the timing and who we are within ourselves, we have to go through a certain journey before we are ready.
Absolutely. Really. A very good friend of mine said to me when I broke, she was actually the brother of my ex's wife, and she said to me, you need a year. She said, you need a year, and I think from when, although the relationship with my ex was over a long time before I left, from the day I left to the day I met my now husband was exactly a year to the day. And so it was almost like she'd give me this, like, right, you need a year, and then it was just ironic that it was 1 year to the day of the day I moved out of.
I mean, you make an interesting point there as well. I think sometimes a lot of single people who have been in a long-term relationship, we try to move on too quickly. Absolutely. I think it depends if it's been dead for a long time. From what you're describing, you probably went through the grieving process while still in the relationship, so that's slightly different. But for a lot of single people, they try to move on far too quickly, which is why they then struggle to meet somebody and create a pattern that's slightly unhealthy and start to attract a certain type. Okay, and Is there, for instance, obviously now we have coaches and dating coaches. Is it something that you think would have been beneficial to you?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I do love a bit of coaching. So
Mm.
it probably is something I would have looked into. I've had coaching for different elements, so business coaching and anxiety coaching. So there's been times when I've used coaches for other things. So maybe if it had been a thing, then maybe I would
Yeah,
have.
it definitely wasn't then, but it is now. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And is there anything you would have done differently?
Oh, um, that's really hard. Because in the end, I'm very happy and I got what I wanted. So I would like to say no, because it was a journey that got me to my destination.
Fair enough. And obviously, you've now been married for quite a long time. So, what would you say are some tips for a successful marriage? I think there's two angles to that question. The first one is really, I think, from the selection process, for want of a better words. And then once you are together, how do you nurture that relationship?
Okay, so I think from the very beginning, I think kind of having the same goals. Obviously, on a first date, don't want to be talking about do you want to have kids and do you want to get married, but kind of knowing those kind of underlying values about. So family was obviously very important to my husband. Even that came across from our first meeting, and just kind of really making sure you're kind of on the same page and that you both kind of ultimately want the same things. I don't think that has to be an awkward conversation early on. Maybe.
Yeah, but I agree. I think it's important. I think sometimes it's in the detail and whether you want life in the same sort of direction. You can be different, but if you have the same sort of outlook on life, which is going to go past, the next 10 years sort of thing, is what you need. And sometimes people don't look any further than, it's okay now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about kind of future proofing that relationship a bit. And I think it's important that you like their friends and that that they like you, because people are really influenced by their friends, by their families. So I think kind of meeting, not just kind of just it being the two of you for quite a long while, kind of getting out there, introducing them to your social network is important, because they could be very very influential as well. In terms of longevity of marriage, I think communication has got to be the biggest thing. Just keep talking, don't take each other for granted. I mean, we've been through some horrific things in the time we've been together. It'll be 10 years next month, and married for 8. And we've gone through some amazing things like the birth of our son and our marriage and all of that. But we've also gone through the loss of parents, financial difficulty, moving house. I think we've moved house about 7 times in that amount of time, which is very stressful. But it's about kind of keeping that communication and always letting each other know how you feel. Is really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one of the things that I find quite frightening, but it's probably because of the world we live in right now, is, people, I used to host events for single people, and it was for the 40 plus, but, we're talking 40 to 65 here. And there were some people who had already been married a couple of times, and the outlook was a bit weird, in the sense of, like, there was one particular lady, she was 60, and she seemed to still expect Prince Charming to rock up, on his horse, the ground to open, the violins to come out, the fireworks at the back. And I'm thinking, but you're 60, you've been married twice, you should know that in real life it doesn't happen. And people seem to think that a marriage or a relationship is only good if it's stable and you never hit any difficult times. But the truth is, you will. And they've got to remember that, you see the Hollywood movies that show you how they meet and how everything's wonderful, but there's never, a part 2 that shows the routine of life, changing nappies and cleaning the house. And there's a reason for that, which is that it's routine and it can be a bit boring. And it is through communication and actually voicing how you feel, but also listening to them properly, that it is going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many things, and I think the difficulties that we've been through have made us definitely stronger, because we tend to take it in turns of who needs the support. So I don't know what would happen if we both lost our stuff at the same time, but it kind of works that there's kind of always a stronger one, and as a family. And communication, I mean, my son is 5. He is obsessed with the iPad, which is something that as a parent I never wanted, but he just, everyone else does it, and he just, you know, if he doesn't, he just does my head in. But then, so it's been the summer holidays, he's been to like camps and stuff like that, and then he'll come home and I'll be like, tell me about your day, and he's like, oh no, have you bought the iPad, and I'm just like, I want to hear about your day. And he doesn't communicate very well, and I find that really sad, so I make a real effort with him to make sure that we have a chat every day about our day. And it's like that, hi dear, how was your day? We always, me and my husband, talk about something, so that, and then we park it and then just get on with then the boring, you know, bath time, bedtime, dinner.
And I think you're right. It is. And even with a child, it's really important to get them into that routine, because otherwise they will never speak, and you're creating a problem for them as an adult. So, well, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you. So, all I want to say is, if you enjoyed this podcast, then please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And I shall talk to you soon in another episode. Thank you.